Hey, what's up, everybody? Braden here, the dad of music, and today I'm going to be doing the monthly roundup for January 2020. And it's a special one because not only is it the first of a new year, it's the first of a new decade. And what better than a new decade to make a monthly roundup video, right? Let's kick things off with 070 Shake's debut record, Modus Vivendi. You may remember 070 Shake from her feature on Kanye West's short but powerful Yay in 2018 on the track Ghost Town. This album, it kind of just met my expectations. I didn't have terribly high expectations. However, I knew it wasn't going to be a flop. She really does have some vocal talent, and pleasantly surprised at the instrumentals on this thing. Honestly, in a lot of ways, this album reminds me of Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon in a lot of ways. It's this spacey, rock inspired, like pop rap R&B blend, and it's really satisfying in a lot of ways, but it's also left me a little disappointed with how undercooked it is in others. First off, I gotta talk about Guilty Conscience. This is one of my favorite singles of the year. It is a complete earworm. There goes my guilty conscience. It's really great, spacey. Oh gosh, it's great, and that's truly the highlight of the record. Rocket Ship is another highlight with its nice spacey production and tight hook. However, my biggest issue with this album is that it just kind of comes and goes, other than a few tracks like the ones I mentioned before. A lot of these tracks just feel like demos or completely unfinished, and one specific example would be Come Around, the second track. If it wasn't so early in the album and so well mixed, I would think it a demo or like an interlude or something, but you know. So I find that to be an issue with a lot of debut albums, is they just don't have that cohesion and track sequencing that you come to expect from a really quality album. But yeah, this has some really nice sounds on it, a couple great songs. Overall, I'm a little disappointed, but I think she has the potential with her voice and her production talent behind her to really make a great record. So I'm going to give this one a C. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Dan Deacon's Mystic Familiar. This is just one of those albums I feel like in a lot of respects was made for me. The influences are really enjoyable, anywhere between new age electronica and vaporwave and hypnagogic inspired sounds and themes, and a healthy dosing of Animal Collective. One particular example of this would be the opener, Become a Mountain, which has these feels like whispery, cooed vocals, which is offset with these really angular and clean new age instrumental, and it's really satisfying. The big centerpiece of this record would be the ARP quadrology of tracks. It's kind of a story arc in the album, and it's really the only part of the album that feels consequential, which I'll get to in a second. But you have these really dense, psychedelic soundscapes, and a lot of the song structures on this album are not conventional at all. Honestly, they remind me of krautrock with the way they're moved by these really pummeling and consistent drum patterns. And that's honestly one of my biggest flaws, is there's just not a lot of considered songwriting here in the way of a traditional song, which I think is why I like Become a Mountain so much, is because you can really get a sense of proper songwriting. Obviously, as someone who likes drone metal, drone, ambient, and other kind of stranger forms of music that don't cohere to this really strict label of songwriting, I am still a little bit disappointed, and I don't think Deacon makes up for it in any meaningful ways. However, I do have to admit that Deacon has a wonderful ear for neo-psychedelia, and I think he brings a lot of fresh sounds and some interesting influences to the table. I'm really excited to see what this guy can cook up next. I know he has quite a storied career that I unfortunately haven't followed up until this point, but he's really caught my attention now. Given this album's flaws, it's still a really enjoyable listen, and it takes me to a place that I would love to revisit. I'm gonna go with a C+ for this one. I'm sorry, guys. I have to talk about it. The new Eminem album, Music to Be Murdered By. To put it bluntly, it's whatever, man. It's not as annoyingly pandering as Revival, nor is it as fan base pandering and cringy with its themes as Kamikaze. It's just kind of a run-of-the-mill post-Golden Age Eminem album. Really, it's just kind of him trying to bring shock value, and apparently it works. These records sell amazingly. I don't buy it. I know a lot of you don't either. The one thing I do have to commend is the production's actually pretty quality. It's nothing amazing or anything I'm going to write home about, but it befits the theme of the record, which is actually the most interesting and least interesting part of this record. Music to be Murdered By, I guess, is an Alfred Hitchcock, I think it's like a soundtrack compilation with some spoken word from him, and he samples this on the interludes. However, this theme has jack shit to do with the rest of the album, which is kind of disappointing. I think Eminem could do something really interesting with like horrorcore type lyrics, but no, none of that's here. You have a lot of the same juvenile themes he likes to bring up in his music, whether it be attempting to get controversy with satire of events like the Manchester bombing and talking how white privilege isn't real. It's just this very tongue-in-cheek but not convincing thing at all. I see right through what he's trying to do. There's actually some pretty interesting features on this record from Black Thought and Anderson .Paak and even Young M.A., which I thought was a very interesting pick, and none of them, I mean, they clearly show more talent than Eminem, but none of them are, they don't really leave a mark on my ears either. It's just kind of exactly what you would expect from an Eminem record. The same lyrical, spiritual miracle, flow, monotonous delivery. I mean, there's no doubt that this guy is technically talented, but he cannot keep writing this forever unless people still buy his records and listen to them, which they seem to not cease in doing. So, I mean, this one's just whatever. It doesn't anger me as much as Kamikaze. It doesn't make me want to stab my ears as much as his more pop-oriented stuff. It's a D. Next, a record I'm actually pretty excited to talk about, the debut Floral Tattoo record, You Can Never Have a Long Enough Head Start. If you're a fan of Glass Beach and Weather Day and any other kind of fusion of emo with, these underground music genres and some queerness, you are really going to dig this. It's very woe is me in a way that if you like emo music, you're really gonna dig this. And there's actually some pretty nice jabs at capitalism throughout, which is something I wasn't really expecting going into this record. But talking about the sound of the record itself, you have these really, really nice shoegaze tones that perfectly complement the emo songwriting, very thick, layered, textured guitars. There's even some horns every now and then. It's kind of a cliche for alternative emo music, but it works really well in this record. I'm not going to act like every song on this record is perfect, but it is a very admirable beginning to what I hope is a really successful career for these guys. Seeing the successes of, Glass Beach and Weather Day in the past, I think you guys should really enjoy this album. If you like those other albums, check it out. You'll love it. I'm going to give this one a B-. Next, I'm going to talk about the posthumous Mac Miller album, Circles. I didn't follow Mac Miller's career up to his death, and I honestly have not checked out his past records besides, a few songs here and there. But I'm really glad I listened to this, and it's really encouraging me to go out and listen to his other projects. Because Circles is a lovely love letter to a career that I know many people cherished. To me, this record is just how you do a posthumous album. It's clear, most people know, that this was supposed to be a companion album with, I believe it was 2018 Swimming in Circles. And I can't speak for Swimming, but this is a really great record. The pop soul sound is really nice. And Mac Miller, I'm not going to act like he is the most perfect voice ever, but he has a really unique voice that I think speaks to a lot of young male sensibilities in a certain charming way. And the songwriting is very heady. It's kind of like a cloudy day vibe to it, but it's a really nice record and great for like a rainy car ride. The sound on this album really reminds me of like when you're in the car with your family in the mid-aughts. Like Good News in particular, that song just sounds like it would be a radio hit like 10 years ago. But it sounds amazing, and it's easily the best track on here. The collaboration between John Brion and Mac feels really nice and organic, and it's awesome to hear that he worked on helping get this album together with what he knew Mac had produced. The production and mixing stands out so much in this album in such a good way. It gives so much space to Mac's voice, letting it breathe, and I feel like a lot of albums like these, like, more modern soul or pop soul records, they kind of over-rely on reverb, but here there's so much negative space that's given great effect and really just adds some weight to the more natural sounding percussion in Mac's voice. So far as posthumous albums go, this is a really honest love letter to a guy. Like I said, many people I know loved, and I thought it was a great album, even without prior connection to the artist and his discography. It's hard to sing this album's praises enough, really. It's just a collection of great songs. I'm going to go with a B+ on this one. Next, I'm going to be talking about the first record I was truly excited for this year, Poppy's I Disagree. I really didn't know what to expect coming into this album, and I'm pretty pleasantly surprised. The mix of pop and metal is surprisingly really well. However, it's what kind of stops me from really connecting with this record. It's a very well executed record. The metal performances are really tight and mixed super well with Poppy's melodic voice. There's a lot of electronic elements to this record that I really wasn't expecting, including this one moment where like this big beat kind of instrumental comes in and it sounds super cheesy in late 90s, and I dig it so much. But I feel like this record feels too gimmicky. It's a fun listen for sure, but I feel like I'm just kind of at arm's length from this thing because it seems so calculated, if that makes sense. It's feeding into this ongoing like lore and narrative, and I can very much tell that. But I think it's a fun record. I really like songs like Bite Your Teeth, I Disagree, Blood Money, some really good songs on here. The last song in this record has this almost Elliott Smith-like cooing from Poppy with some like glitchy instrumentals and percussion and this lyrical repetition that's honestly hypnotic. It's a really cool moment. There's a lot to like on this record. I just, I'm not loving it, but it was a fun listen, honestly. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a C+. One album, which I didn't even know I needed until I listened to it, is Sewer Slut's Draining Love Story. This album is an atmospheric drum and bass record, which is a subgenre I am not super familiar with. However, I am very much looking forward to delving deeper into this one after hearing this great record. I'm just gonna flat out say this is a great record. Mixing pummeling, just non-stop frenetic percussion with these super spacey, urban, neon-lit soundscapes, it makes for a really nice listen. And a lot of the samples here are just completely out there and really befit the kind of dark internet vibe that this album. Samples from like what seems to be like terribly dubbed 90s anime, some old movies, and even what I believe is a woman crying and masturbating at the same time, if I'm gathering that correctly. It's really nice to see these kind of sounds come together in a really cohesive way. And a lot of records like these that have really nice sonic concepts, I feel like the songs just aren't there, but they're there with this record. This is an excellently paced album. It's just a collection of really long electronic tracks with some ambient interludes, super nice drum and bass sound. Obviously, I'm not super fluent in talking about this genre, drum and bass, and I'm learning to talk more about electronic music, but even I can tell this is something super special. And even though my words may not do it justice, I really recommend you check this record out. It's one of my favorites of the month. I'm going to give this one a B+. The last record I'm going to be talking about today is Tricot's Makuro. I believe that's how you pronounce that, which means pitch black. See, I know my words. If Tricot are known for anything, it's writing super nice pop songs with these really interesting noodly math rock instrumentals. One thing that's immediately awesome about this album is that it's just a bunch of kick-ass Japanese women taking over a typically white male-dominated genre and just killing it. What I think is most interesting is how Tricot uses this sound that's typically reserved for, just kind of sound wankery and experimentation, and they make it a really enjoyable pop music out of it. It's fascinating how the band can create such a versatile package of songs with the similar instrumentation all throughout. They go from the lush and harmonious on track 12, very beautiful song, to some really noisy and frenetic instrumentation on the first track. Obviously, I cannot speak on the lyrical themes of this record, considering I'm not a speaker of Japanese, but I can tell you that this is a fantastic sounding record, and this might sound overgeneralizing, but I promise this comparison makes sense if you listen to it. But if you just want to hear an album that sounds like math rock anime openings, I've now shown you the best album, and you're gonna love me forever. And you should show that love by liking and subscribing. Okay, wait, I should probably rate this album. I'm gonna give Tricot's Macaro a B. So that wraps it up for this month. I'll have links to these records in, not the chat, in the description for your listening pleasure. I highly recommend almost every one of these albums. It's been a surprisingly good intro to the year. I try to usually cover better records, but, you know, I'll throw a shitter in there. Clearly, I talked about the new Eminem record. But yeah, so I look forward to seeing you guys next month with another monthly roundup and maybe some more. So, kudos. I just realized that kudos does not mean bye.